The Sarathi Empire was an ancient power among the stars. Their fleet spread across many systems. Their soldiers guarded countless worlds, and their rulers were known to be wise and strong. At the heart of this empire stood Sarath Prime, a planet of shining towers, grand halls, and endless gardens. Every traveler who visited called it the crown of the galaxy. The empire was ruled by Queen Aethera. She was tall, proud, and known for her sharp mind. Her people respected her not only as a leader but as a mother, for she was the guardian of two daughters, the twin princesses Lyra and Sira. The princesses were young, not yet grown into rulers but already the hope of their people. Wherever they appeared, the people cheered. Songs were sung about them, paintings of their bright eyes filled the markets, and the empire believed that as long as the daughters lived, the future would be safe. The princesses lived in the royal palace, a structure larger than cities, surrounded by walls of crystal and steel. The palace was protected by shield barriers, patrol guards, and watchful drones that circled above day and night. No thief, no spy, no intruder had ever broken its defenses. Many claimed it was the safest place in the galaxy. Inside these walls, the daughters were never without watch. Their guards were trained from childhood, sworn to protect the royal line with their lives. Every breath the princesses took was under the care of the finest the Sarathi could offer. On the night of the solstice, the empire prepared for celebration. The palace halls were decorated with lights. The gardens glowed with floating lanterns, and musicians filled the air with songs of triumph. It was a night when the people of Sarath gave thanks to the stars and honored the bond of their empire. The princesses retired early, their attendants guiding them into their chamber, wishing them rest before the day's grand ceremony. The chamber was sealed. Guards took their posts outside the door. The shields remained in place. Cameras showed the young princesses lying in their room, laughing softly to one another before drifting to sleep. All was calm. By morning, calm turned to terror. When attendants entered the room, they found the beds empty. The chamber was silent. The windows were locked, the doors sealed. The guards swore no one had entered or left. The cameras showed the twins lying down the night before, but nothing after that. Hours of recording showed nothing at all, as if time itself had swallowed them. Panic spread. The guards fell to their knees, begging forgiveness. The attendants wept. Word raced to the throne room. Within minutes, Queen Aethera stood before her council. She wore the armor of her ancestors, polished to a black shine, though it had been centuries since a queen had worn it outside ceremony. Her eyes glowed with fire as she demanded an answer. Explain to me how the heirs of my empire vanish within the strongest walls ever built. No one answered. Commanders replayed the recordings again and again. The princesses went to bed. Then silence. No intruder, no alarm, no struggle. Simply gone. Aethera ordered the palace sealed. No servant, no guest, no ambassador was allowed to leave. Soldiers filled the halls, their weapons ready. Every corner was searched. Every chamber was opened. Ancient tunnels were mapped again. Vaults were inspected, even walls were scanned for hidden chambers. Drones swarmed the skies. Satellites watched from orbit, and energy beams probed the ground below. Still, no trace appeared. The disappearance spread through the empire like a storm. On Sarath Prime, crowds gathered outside the palace gates, holding banners calling the names of the daughters. In distant systems, governors sent fearful messages. If the empire could not protect its heirs, how could it protect its people? Rivals in the Galactic Council whispered of weakness. Some said the empire was cursed. Others said rebellion would rise. The queen did not show fear, though her heart ached. She stood firm, her voice steady, but in private chambers her fist tightened. Her daughters were not only her heirs but her children. To lose them was to lose the light of her life. Advisors filled the throne room with theories. Some said it was betrayal by a rival house. Others claimed an enemy empire had struck with hidden technology. Some even whispered that the humans were responsible, for the humans were always curious, always interfering, and always unpredictable. But Aethera shook her head. No ship left orbit. No enemy entered. This is no theft of flesh, but something deeper, something unseen. In desperation, the queen summoned the seers of Sarath. These mystics were said to feel the echoes of time and see threads hidden from machines. In a chamber filled with smoke and light, they stood in a circle, chanting softly, their hands raised. Hours passed as they searched for the daughter's trail. At last, the eldest seer opened her eyes. We see nothing. No shadow, no echo, no thread. It is as if they stepped into silence. The queen dismissed them with thanks but without trust. She did not want riddles. She wanted answers. While the Sarathi searched with their advanced machines, word of the crisis reached the humans who lived on Sarath Prime. Humanity was new to the stars. Their ships were smaller, their colonies younger, their technology less refined. The Sarathi respected their courage but often called them reckless, as if they were children running into the dark. Among the humans was a patrol officer named Ryan. He was not a commander or a scholar. His duty was simple: maintain the communication relays that connected the palace to the orbital stations. It was work that most Sarathi saw as beneath notice, but Ryan did it with care. As he adjusted frequencies that morning, he noticed something strange. A faint signal pulsed in the system. It was weak, almost lost in the noise, but steady like a faint heartbeat. Sarathi machines dismissed it as static. To them it was nothing, but Ryan felt it was wrong. He traced the timing of the signal. When he compared it to the records of the night before, he saw that the pulse began at the same hour the princesses vanished. His instincts told him it was not chance. Ryan carried his report to a Sarathi officer. The tall alien listened with patience, then shook his head. "Our scanners detect nothing. Your device is human and limited. Do not waste time with static. Leave this matter to those who understand it." The officer walked away. Ryan stood in silence. His chest tightened with unease. The Sarathi trusted only their machines, but humans trusted something else as well. Instinct. Experience. The sense that when something feels wrong, it should not be ignored. That evening, while the palace searched in vain, Ryan returned alone to the relay. He tuned his scanner again, pushing it past safe limits. The signal grew clearer. It was faint, broken, but real. It pulsed from deep within the palace. Not outward, not into space, but inward. The trail pointed to a forgotten wing, long abandoned when the palace was rebuilt centuries before. Dust and shadow ruled there now. Few even remembered its halls. Ryan hesitated at the entrance. He was only a patrol officer. He had no right to walk these halls. But the signal was calling, and his heart told him the truth. The princesses had not been taken across the stars. They were still here, hidden within the walls that claimed to be the safest in the galaxy. With his crude human scanner in one hand and his courage in the other, Ryan stepped into the silent halls, unaware that his choice would change how the entire galaxy saw humanity forever. The sealed palace had become a cage of worry and fear. Soldiers walked the halls in heavy silence, their boots striking the polished floors in rhythm yet finding nothing. Advisors whispered to one another in corners, their voices sharp with suspicion. The queen listened to each report, her expression like stone. The princesses were still gone, and every hour made the empire feel more fragile. Outside the palace walls, the news spread to every system in the empire. Colonies far from Sarath Prime demanded protection, fearing that if the royal family could not defend its own, then no citizen was safe. Allied worlds offered sympathy, while rivals sent polite messages that carried hidden tones of mockery. Across the Galactic Council, the disappearance of the princesses was spoken of as a sign of weakness. For the Sarathi, who prided themselves on control and order, this was unbearable. Within the palace, the search had turned desperate. New squads of soldiers were summoned. Scanners were recalibrated. Ancient tunnels were mapped again and again. Yet nothing changed. Every effort ended in silence. The Empire's most advanced machines, built to pierce the depths of stars, could not find the heirs of their throne. Advisors pressed the Queen to widen the search beyond Sarath Prime. Some suggested that the daughters had been taken through hidden teleportation devices, spirited away to distant worlds. Fleets were ready to scan nearby systems. Messages were sent to every ally, demanding that all ships be stopped and searched. The Empire's borders became tight like a clenched fist. But Queen Aethera knew something was strange. She walked the halls of the palace alone at night, staring at the sealed doors of her daughter's chamber. Her soldiers bowed as she passed, but she did not see them. In her mind, she repeated one thought. If her daughters had been stolen, the thieves would have left some trace. Yet there was none. It was as if they had vanished into a silence that technology could not touch. Far from the throne room, in a quiet corner of the palace, Ryan stood before the abandoned wing. His small human scanner pulsed in his hand, faint but steady. The signal he had discovered still called from within. He had not told anyone about his second exploration. The Sarathi officers had dismissed him once already. To them, a human patrol officer's instincts meant nothing compared to their advanced machines, but Ryan trusted what he felt. He stepped forward into the wing. Dust clung to the air. The walls were marked by age, the ceilings cracked where light struggled to shine. His boots left prints on the floor where no one had walked in centuries. The deeper he went, the stronger the signal became. His heart beat faster with every step. The hall led him to a sealed chamber. The doors were old, marked with rust, and his scanner pulsed brightest when he stood before them. He reached out, pressing his hand to the surface. The metal was cold. For a long moment he stood still, unsure if he should open it. Then he pulled back. Rian was bold, but he was not foolish. If the princesses truly were hidden here, this was not something he could face alone. He turned back, leaving the chamber untouched. He would need proof before returning, something stronger than a human scanner's reading. While Rian thought of how to act, suspicion in the palace grew. Some Sarathi commanders began pointing at humans more openly. They said humans were curious by nature, that they wandered where they did not belong, and that their crude devices might have allowed them to bypass Sarathi technology in some reckless experiment. A group of alien ambassadors, gathered for the solstice, were questioned harshly. They denied any part in the disappearance, but the Sarathi looked at them with narrowed eyes. To lose the princesses was shame enough. To admit they could not solve the mystery was worse. The Empire needed someone to blame, and the youngest species among them made for an easy target. Queen Athera, however, did not rush to blame. She knew her empire was full of rivals, but she also knew that accusing without proof would only weaken her more. Still, her patience grew thin. Each night she looked to the stars, her daughters' faces in her mind, and promised herself she would not stop until they were found. One evening, as the queen held council, Ryan stood outside the hall listening. The Sarathi spoke of sending fleets to search entire systems, of questioning every ship that passed through their borders. Ryan's hands clenched. They were searching the stars when the answer was here, hidden within the palace itself. He stepped forward. Guards moved to block him, but he raised his voice. "I have found something," he said. The council turned. Dozens of eyes fixed on him, some filled with anger at his interruption, others with curiosity. Rian bowed respectfully and spoke again. "Your machines show nothing, but my scanner has detected a signal. It began at the same hour your princesses vanished. It leads not into space but into the old wing of the palace. I believe they are still here." Laughter echoed through the hall. One commander shook his head. "You expect us to believe that a crude human device can see what our machines cannot?" Another sneered. "You are bold to speak in this chamber, human." "Bold or foolish," Ryan held his ground. "I may be foolish, but I am not lying. The signal is real. If you wish, send your soldiers with me. Let them see for themselves." The queen raised her hand. The hall fell silent. She studied Rian for a long time, her golden eyes unblinking. At last she spoke. "You claim to have found a trail when all others see nothing. If you are wrong, you will answer for wasting our time. If you are right, then you may have done what none of my people could." She signaled to her guards. "Go with him. Search the old wing." A squad of soldiers followed Ryan through the forgotten halls. They carried heavy rifles and advanced scanners, their eyes scanning every corner. When they reached the sealed chamber, Ryan's device pulsed brighter than ever. He placed his hand on the door again. "Here," he said. The soldiers activated their scanners. At first they saw nothing. Then faintly a ripple appeared. A thin distortion shimmered across the surface, barely visible. The soldiers gasped. Their scanners, tuned higher, confirmed it. An energy field hidden so cleverly that it blended with the walls themselves. One soldier touched it and was thrown back by a surge of force. Another tried to pierce it with a plasma blade, but the blade slid off as if striking glass. The field remained, humming faintly. Rian's scanner, however, reacted differently. When he brought it closer, the field flickered. The soldiers stepped back, shocked. "It responds to him," one whispered. Rian frowned. He did not understand why. His device was old, built for repairs, not for unlocking alien barriers. Yet it seemed that his presence disturbed the field in a way Sarathi machines could not. The soldiers returned to the queen with their report. For the first time since the disappearance, hope stirred in the throne room. Athera rose from her seat, her voice steady but charged with new strength. If what you say is true, then the key to finding my daughters lies not in fleets or machines, but in the hands of a human. The council erupted in protest. Some shouted that it was shameful to rely on such a young species. Others warned it was a trap. But the queen silenced them with a single word. Enough. She looked at Ryan, her gaze sharp. You will go back to that chamber. You will find the way through. If my daughters are there, you will bring them to me. Do this and your name will be remembered across the stars. Fail, and you will face the weight of an empire's wrath. Ryan bowed. I will not fail. As he turned to leave, he felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, some filled with doubt, some with anger, and a few with hope. He knew he was walking into danger, but he also knew he could not turn back. The signal had called to him for a reason. The queen's daughters were still alive. He could feel it, and he would not rest until he brought them back. The palace was silent when Ryan returned to the old wing. Soldiers marched behind him, their steps heavy and slow, their eyes sharp and cautious. None of them trusted what they were walking into, yet none dared speak against the command of their queen. The sealed chamber stood before them, its surface faintly shimmering with the hidden field. The soldiers raised their rifles, aiming at the invisible barrier, but they did not fire. They knew their weapons had already failed against it. Ryan stepped forward, his small human scanner in his hand, the crude device pulsing with uneven light. The soldiers watched closely. To them, the device looked fragile compared to their advanced machines. Yet when Ryan held it near the field, the shimmering wall trembled. It was as though the energy reacted to him, bending slightly at his touch. One soldier muttered under his breath, "Impossible." Another whispered, "Why does it answer him and not us?" Ryan ignored their words. His focus stayed on the signal. He pressed his palm against the surface again. The field flickered stronger, then weaker, as if it could not decide whether to resist him or allow him through. His heart raced. He pressed harder, and suddenly his hand passed through. Gasps filled the hall. The soldiers raised their weapons, but Ryan pulled his hand back unharmed. He looked at them with steady eyes. "It opens for me," he said. The squad leader hesitated, then spoke. "Then you will go first." "We will follow," Ryan nodded. With his scanner held close, he stepped through the field. A ripple of energy spread around him, but it did not harm him. He passed into darkness, the soldiers following cautiously behind. The chamber was vast, larger than he expected. Dust floated in the air, and the walls were covered with strange symbols glowing faintly. The light of the soldiers' rifles swept across the room, revealing broken machines and collapsed pillars. It looked ancient, as though it had been hidden for centuries, waiting to be found. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform. Upon it rested two small figures. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The princesses, Lyra and Sira, lay side by side, their faces calm, their eyes closed as if in deep sleep. Their chests rose and fell slowly, steady with life. They were not bound, not harmed, only resting. They looked untouched by fear. The soldiers froze, unable to believe what they saw. Then, without waiting for command, they lowered their weapons and fell to their knees. "The heirs," one whispered. "The daughters live," another said. Ryan hurried forward, climbing the steps to the platform. He reached out carefully, touching Lyra's wrist, then Sira's. Their pulses were strong, their skin warm. They stirred faintly but did not wake. Instead, as he leaned closer, both shifted in their sleep and moved toward him. To his shock, their small hands reached for his chest, resting there as though they had always known him. The soldiers stared in silence. These were the most precious heirs of the Sarathi Empire, and yet they ignored their own guards. They did not cling to their kind, but to a human stranger. Ryan felt their fragile trust and did not move. He let them rest, holding himself steady so they would not fall. His chest tightened, not with fear, but with something deeper, something he could not explain. The squad leader spoke, his voice unsteady. "How is this possible? Why do they cling to him?" Another soldier shook his head. They sensed something in him. Perhaps he is the reason they survived. Ryan looked around the chamber. The strange machines that surrounded the platform hummed faintly as if still alive. He studied the symbols glowing on the walls. They were not Sarathi designs. Their shapes were sharper, their meanings hidden. This chamber did not belong to the Empire. It was older, built by hands long gone. One machine still pulsed with dim light. Ryan adjusted his scanner, reading the faint energy. The signal he had traced all along came from here. It was the same heartbeat-like pulse he had followed through the palace. He realized the truth. The field, the signal, the chamber, it had been designed to trap the princesses. The energy field had hidden them, cutting them off from the outside world, and if not for his scanner's interference, they might have remained sealed until their lives faded away. The soldiers sensed it too. Their fear grew. This was no accident, one said. This was a weapon. Ryan shook his head. A trap, not a weapon. Someone wanted them hidden, not destroyed, and someone knew your machines would never see through it. The squad leader's jaw tightened. Then who could do this? No empire we know has such technology. Ryan thought of the alien symbols, the ancient machines, the silence that had swallowed the princesses. He felt certain the answer lay in the past, with a species long gone or forgotten. But now was not the time for theories. Now was the time to return the daughters. Carefully, he lifted one princess into his arms. The other stirred and, without hesitation, curled against his side, resting once again against his chest. The soldiers were stunned into silence. "Call the queen," the leader ordered. "Tell her the heirs have been found." The soldiers activated their communicators, sending the message. Minutes later, the chamber filled with more guards, then advisors, and finally the queen herself. She entered the room with slow, deliberate steps, her presence commanding silence. When her eyes fell on the platform, she stopped. For the first time since the vanishing, her composure cracked. She rushed forward, her voice breaking as she called her daughters' names. The soldier stepped aside as Ryan descended from the platform, the princesses resting peacefully in his arms. He stopped before the queen and lowered his head in respect. "My queen," he said softly, "they live. They are unharmed." Athera reached out, touching her daughters' faces with trembling hands. Tears filled her golden eyes, though her voice stayed firm. "You brought them back to me." The soldiers watched in awe. The queen, who never showed weakness, now wept openly before them. Yet the strangest part was still the princesses. Even as their mother touched them, they did not move away from the human's chest. They clung to him as if he were their protector. The council members murmured among themselves. Some spoke of miracles, others of shame, that their greatest machines had failed while a human succeeded. The queen silenced them with a glance. "Take them to safety," she ordered. The princesses were carried gently to the royal chamber, where healers prepared to examine them. Yet even as they were lifted away, their small hands reached for Ryan, unwilling to let go. When the chamber was empty again, the queen remained with Ryan. She studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. "You found what none of my empire could," she said at last. "You followed where others would not. And my daughters, who have never known you, trust you without question." Ryan bowed. "I only followed the signal. It was chance that I found them." The queen shook her head. "No, it was not chance. There is more here than we understand. The machines in this chamber, the field that held them, the way your presence disturbed it, none of this is chance." Her eyes narrowed, sharp once more. "I will know the truth. But first I will see my daughter safe." She turned to leave, then paused. "You will remain in the palace, Rian of humanity. From this day you are bound to this mystery as much as I am. If fate chose you to bring back my heirs, then fate will keep you near until this is finished." Ryan stood alone after she left, his scanner still pulsing faintly in his hand. He looked at the strange symbols on the walls, feeling the weight of what he had uncovered. The princesses were safe for now. But the mystery was far from over. Whoever had built this chamber, whoever had planned this trap, had done so with purpose. And if they had failed once, they might try again. For the first time, Ryan felt the eyes of the galaxy upon him, not as a simple patrol officer, but as the human who had found what the Sarathi could not. And deep in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The royal palace was alive with celebration. Word spread quickly across Sarath Prime that the princesses had been found alive. Citizens gathered at the gates, singing praises to the queen and holding lanterns high in the night sky. In every corner of the empire, the people rejoiced, believing the crisis had ended. Yet within the palace walls, the queen did not rest. She sat by her daughter's side as healers examined them carefully. Lyra and Sira were healthy, their hearts steady and their breathing calm. No wound, no poison, no sickness could be found. They appeared as though they had simply fallen asleep and chosen not to wake until now. Still, the healers could not explain why the princesses had been drawn into the hidden chamber. nor why they had clung so firmly to the human Ryan. Each time they stirred in their rest, their hands reached out searching for him. When he entered the room, their breathing grew calmer. When he stepped away, they shifted uneasily. The queen watched this in silence. She was proud and unyielding. Yet a mother's heart was not blind. She could see the truth with her own eyes. Her daughters trusted the human, but there was no peace in her heart. Something greater lingered in the shadows. The chamber had not been a simple hiding place. It was built with purpose. Someone or something had trapped the heirs of her empire, and it had taken a human's crude device to reveal it. The queen summoned her council once more. The chamber was to be sealed and studied. Soldiers placed guards at every entrance, while scholars examined the strange machines and symbols that lined the walls. Teams worked day and night recording every detail, yet progress was slow. The language on the walls was not Scifi, nor any known tongue of their allies or enemies. One scholar trembled as he gave his first report. These machines are older than our empire, perhaps older than any living species in the council. This chamber was not built by us. It was hidden beneath the palace when our ancestors first raised these walls. The council erupted in disbelief, but the evidence was clear. The Scifi had built their palace upon ruins far older than they imagined. The queen's voice cut through the noise. Then the question is not how, but why. Why would these ruins lie beneath our feet? Why did they awaken only now to claim my daughters? No one answered. Rian listened from the edge of the room. He had been invited to the council not as an equal, but because the queen demanded it. His scanner still pulsed faintly when near the chamber, though the Scifi machines saw nothing. To the scholars, this was an insult. To the queen, it was proof. When the meeting ended, Ryan walked the palace grounds and thought. The soldiers no longer sneered at him. Some even saluted as he passed. They did not understand why their heirs trusted him, but they had seen it with their own eyes. The human had done what none of them could. Late that night, Ryan returned to the sealed chamber. Guards stood watch but allowed him entry under the queen's orders. The air inside was heavy, filled with the faint hum of the ancient machines. He walked among them slowly, his scanner glowing brighter near the platform where the princesses had rested. Suddenly, the glow changed. The scanner pulsed faster, sharper. Ryan froze. The walls trembled faintly as if responding to the signal. He raised his eyes and saw one of the symbols flare with light. A low sound filled the chamber, not the hum of machines, but something colder, a whisper that crawled into his ears though no voice was present. His body shivered, his breath caught. He could not understand the words, yet he felt their meaning. A warning, or perhaps a threat. The guards noticed his pale face. "What is it, human?" Ryan shook his head slowly. "Something is waking." The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons. Moments later, the machines flickered again, then fell silent. The chamber returned to stillness. Ryan reported what he felt to the queen. Many dismissed it as imagination, but the queen did not. She had seen enough to know that the human's instincts were sharper than the pride of her own advisors. In the following days, strange events began to spread beyond the chamber. Lights in the palace dimmed without cause. Drones lost their signals for seconds at a time before resuming as if nothing happened. Guards reported hearing faint whispers in the halls, though no one was there. In one corridor, a soldier collapsed, claiming he had felt unseen hands press upon his chest. When healers examined him, they found no wound, but his heart raced as though he had seen death itself. Fear crept into the palace like a shadow. The queen gathered her commanders. "This enemy does not march with soldiers. It does not strike with fleets. It hides in silence, waiting to be unseen. If we cannot understand it, then it will strike again." One commander demanded stronger shields. Another wanted to burn the old wing entirely. But the queen shook her head. "If we destroy what we do not understand, we will learn nothing. And this enemy will only return in another form." Her gaze turned to Ryan. "You felt it when others did not. You broke the silence when others could not. You will not stand aside. You will walk this path with us," Ryan nodded. "If this enemy hides in silence, then we must learn to hear it." Together with a team of scholars and soldiers, Ryan began studying the chamber more closely. He noticed how his scanner reacted differently than Scifi machines, where their devices showed emptiness. His showed faint patterns like echoes of movement. When he adjusted the frequencies, he began to map shapes in the air. Not solid, but outlines as if something invisible moved within the chamber. The scholars gasped when they saw it. The shapes looked like shadows of living beings, but twisted, as though broken by time. They shifted slowly, moving from wall to wall, never fully formed. One scholar whispered, "These are not machines. These are the remains of something that once lived here." Another shook his head. Not remains, traces, echoes left behind. Perhaps a warning. Perhaps a trap. Ryan studied the patterns with narrowed eyes. He could not explain them, but he felt one thing clearly. The chamber was not empty. It was alive in a way no one could understand. That night he returned to his quarters, but sleep did not come. His thoughts raced. He remembered the princesses lying peacefully on the platform, untouched by harm yet sealed away from the world. He remembered the whispers in the chamber, cold and sharp, and he wondered who or what had placed them there. The answer came sooner than he expected. On the fourth night after the discovery, alarms shook the palace. Soldiers rushed through the halls, weapons ready. Lights flickered, power grids surged, and in the old wing the energy field returned, sealing the chamber once more. Inside, machines flared to life. Symbols glowed across the walls, casting the chamber in strange light, and in the heart of it the shadows took form. Not full bodies, not solid figures, but towering shapes that loomed like specters. Their presence filled the air with a cold weight. Rian stood at the entrance with a squad of soldiers. His scanner screamed with pulses. The shadows turned toward them, though they had no faces, no eyes. Yet Ryan felt their gaze pierce through him. The soldiers raised their rifles, fear in their eyes. One shouted, "What are they?" Ryan's voice was low. "The silent enemy." The shadows surged forward, not with weapons, but with waves of crushing force. Soldiers staggered back, some thrown to the ground. Blades of plasma struck out but passed through the figures harmlessly. Bullets burned away in their glow. The chamber shook as if the palace itself resisted their presence. Ryan forced his trembling hands to steady his scanner. He tuned it higher, the pulses growing louder until the shadows flinched. Their shapes wavered, their forms bending. "They react to this," Rian shouted. "Cover me." The soldiers formed a wall before him, firing again and again, even though their weapons could not strike. Ryan stepped forward, his scanner glowing like fire. The shadows pulled back, but not far. They circled, waiting, watching. One whisper cut through the air, clearer than before. A voice not of flesh, but of memory. "They are ours." Rian felt his heart pound. He shouted back without fear. "No, they are not." The scanner flared brighter, and the shadows fell back into the walls. The chamber shook violently, then grew silent once more. The lights faded, the whispers stopped. The soldiers breathed heavily, staring at the empty space where the figures had been. Ryan lowered his scanner slowly. Sweat ran down his face. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. The squad leader approached. "You faced them as if you knew them." Ryan shook his head. "I do not know what they are. But I know this. They are not gone. They will return, and next time, they will not hide." When the queen heard his words, she did not flinch. She looked out over her empire, knowing the truth. This was not the end of the crisis. It was only the beginning of a war against an enemy that did not fight with armies, but with silence itself. And humanity, through one simple patrol officer, now stood at the center of it. The silent enemy had shown itself and then faded back into the walls. But no one in the palace could forget what they had seen. Soldiers whispered about shadow figures that could not be struck by weapons. Advisors debated in fear whether the Sarathi Empire was cursed. The queen herself stood unmoved, yet her eyes betrayed the weight she carried. The princesses slept peacefully still, untouched by the chaos, but their rest no longer comforted anyone. The people rejoiced outside the palace gates, believing the heirs were safe, yet only the queen and her closest circle knew the truth. The danger was not gone, it was growing. The queen called for Rian once more. He stood before her throne, tired but steady. His scanner hung from his belt, its faint pulse the only sound in the silent chamber. "You faced them," Athera said, "and they retreated. My soldiers could not harm them, yet they reacted to you. Do you understand why?" Ryan shook his head. "I only know they respond to sound, to signal. My scanner is crude, but it makes them weaken. They fear disruption. They hide in silence, but when you break that silence, they falter." The queen leaned forward. "Then you must teach us. Show us how to hear them. Show us how to fight them." Her council argued at once. "He is human. His tools are primitive. We cannot rely on him." But Athera silenced them with a single look. "My daughters live because of him. If not for his scanner, they would still be trapped. You will not speak of weakness while his strength stands before us. The chamber fell silent. Rian lowered his head. I will help in any way I can. But this is not only about your empire. Whatever those things are, they may not stop here. If they wake fully, they may spread beyond your world. The Queen's gaze hardened. She knew he was right. Over the next days, Ryan worked with Sarathi engineers. His scanner was small, built from human parts that the Sarathi had once dismissed as outdated. Now those same parts became the key to new devices. Together, they built amplifiers, larger machines that could spread sound waves across the palace, breaking silence where the enemy hid. Soldiers trained with them, learning not only to fire rifles but to carry resonance packs that pulsed with signal. Still, fear clung to their hearts. The memory of shadow forms pressing through walls was not easily forgotten. Ryan spent his nights studying the symbols from the chamber. He could not read them, but he noticed patterns, shapes repeated in cycles like warnings carved long ago. He believed the builders of the chamber had faced the same enemy. Perhaps they had sealed the princesses not out of malice, but to protect them from something greater. When he shared this thought with the Queen, she listened in silence. Then she said, "If you are right, then this enemy has waited ages for its chance, and now it has chosen to rise again." The waiting did not last long. On the 7th night after the first attack, the shadows returned. The palace shook with whispers, cold voices crawling through the halls. Lights flickered, soldiers stumbled, and drones fell dead from the air. In the old wing, the chamber glowed once more. This time, the shadows did not remain inside. They poured through the walls, spilling into corridors, moving like smoke yet striking with force. Guards fired plasma, but the beams passed uselessly through them. Resonance packs were activated, sending pulses through the air. And the shadows shrieked without sound, their forms breaking apart. Ryan ran with the soldiers, his scanner tuned to its highest frequency. Each pulse drove the shadows back, yet they regrouped again and again. They were not a single enemy, but many, moving like a storm. The Queen herself stood at the palace gates, her golden armor gleaming. Her voice rang across the halls, commanding her soldiers not to break. But even she knew the truth. Weapons alone would not win this fight. Rian pushed forward into the old wing, where the energy field had returned. He felt the pulse stronger here, as if the heart of the enemy lay within. The shadows thickened around him, their whispers growing louder. "They are ours." "The heirs belong to us," Rian shouted back. "They belong to no one." "Not you, not me, not anyone." The scanner blazed with light. The shadows recoiled, their forms twisting in pain. But one surged forward, larger than the rest, a towering figure of darkness. It struck with a wave of force that hurled soldiers aside. Only Ryan stood his ground, his scanner sparking in his grip. The figure's voice filled the chamber. "You are not Sarathi. You are not of this world. Why do you stand against us?" Ryan's chest rose and fell with heavy breath. "Because I am human, and humans do not give what is not ours to give. These children are not yours. They are not mine. They are theirs, and I will not let you take them." For a moment, silence fell. The shadows trembled as if uncertain. Ryan seized the chance. He turned the scanner higher than ever before, beyond safe limits. The device shook in his hands, sparks flying, the sound a piercing wave that tore through the chamber. The shadows screamed, their forms collapsing, breaking into fragments of smoke. The towering figure staggered, its voice no longer steady. "You cannot end us. We are silence. We are forever." Rian's voice rose above the noise. "Then humanity will be the sound that breaks you." With one final surge, the scanner burst apart in his hands, the wave spreading across the entire wing. The walls shook, the symbols flared bright, and the shadows shattered like glass. They dissolved into nothing, leaving only silence. True silence, not the cold weight of before. The soldiers lay stunned, ears ringing, but alive. Slowly they rose, their eyes wide. The shadows were gone. The Queen entered the chamber, her armor scorched from battle. She saw Ryan kneeling amid the broken scanner, his hands burned but steady. She looked around at the empty walls, then back at him. "You ended them," she said softly. Ryan shook his head. "I broke them here, but I do not know if they are truly ended. Silence may return in another place, another time. But for now, your daughters are safe." The Queen looked at him for a long moment. Then, in front of her soldiers, she lowered her head slightly. A gesture of respect rare for a Sarathi ruler. "You are not of my people," she said, "but you have saved my empire. From this day you are not only a guest, you are a guardian of my heirs." The soldiers struck their fists to their chests in salute. Even the proudest among them could not deny the truth. A human had done what none of them could. Later, when peace returned to the palace, Ryan visited the princesses once more. Lyra and Sira stirred from their long rest at last. Their eyes opened slowly, bright and curious. They looked at their mother, then at the human standing beside her. Small voices spoke as one. "You kept us safe." Ryan smiled, though his heart felt heavy with all that had passed. "You kept yourself safe. I only helped a little." The queen placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders, then looked at Ryan. "Perhaps that is what humanity is, Ryan. A people who help more than they admit. A people who see what others ignore. A people who break silence with courage." Outside the palace, the empire celebrated once more. But this time the queen told the truth. She spoke of an enemy that hid in silence, of an ancient threat that had tried to steal the heirs. And she spoke of a human, small in stature but vast in spirit, who had faced the darkness and returned with light. The galaxy listened. Some doubted, others feared, but many whispered a new phrase with respect. Humans. Fragile in body yet unbroken in will. And though Ryan stood quietly at the edge of the ceremony, far from the throne, he felt the weight of those words. Not as praise but as promise. Humanity had been noticed. Humanity had shown itself. And when silence came again anywhere in the stars, humanity would answer.